The room was too clean to be merciful. Every surface gleamed in antiseptic silver, the walls humming with low mechanical breath. Lieutenant Evelyn Ross sat in the center, barefoot, wrists bound in transparent alloy cuffs that pulsed faint blue with every heartbeat. She looked like someone waiting for coffee, rather than interrogation. Her hair, once regulation neat, fell loose over one eye. Her lips curled in a faint, polite smile. Across from her, 8 eyes blinked in uneven rhythm. The Zerathian interrogator, draped in ceremonial black silk, studied her as though she were a misbehaving experiment. "You humans," it began, voice like wet stone. "Your species breaks under the softest persuasion. Yet you remain silent. Fascinating inconsistency." Evelyn tilted her head, the way a cat pretends curiosity. "Maybe we just like good conversation." The translator stuttered, searching for tone markers. It spat out sarcastic compliance detected. The alien frowned. Evelyn smiled wider. Behind the glass, a semicircle of observers, scholars, strategists, a medic with twitching tentacles, scribbled notes about her pulse, respiration, and unbroken facial confidence. One whispered, "She has not flinched since capture." Another replied, "Then increase the amplitude. Let's see if that smile survives voltage." Evelyn's restraint sparked, and a shudder of light crawled up her arms. She inhaled through her nose, slow, controlled, like an athlete timing her breath. When it stopped, she exhaled, blinking once. "If this is hospitality, you folks really need Yelp." The interrogator hissed, "You think humor will conceal fear?" "No," she said lightly. "It just makes your day shorter." He loomed closer, the scent of ozone clinging to his robes. "Your fleet is gone. Your planet." She interrupted with a soft laugh. "You don't actually believe that, do you? You've met humans. We don't do extinction. We just take coffee breaks between wars." A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. It wasn't the words, it was the tone. Polite. Measured. Too calm for a prisoner who had been electrocuted 3 times. The guards exchanged glances, uncertain whether she was broken or merely waiting. The interrogator gestured to the console. "Administer the neural scan. Perhaps she hides commands in her mind." As the probe descended, Evelyn asked gently, "Is this going to hurt me or you?" Static flared, monitors flickered, and the probe halted midair, vibrating. "Interference detected," the technician croaked. "Source unknown." Evelyn leaned back against the chair's cold spine. "We're a noisy species. Sorry about that." For a moment, the ship itself seemed to hold its breath. Then the system stabilized, and the interrogator sighed through his spiral gills. "Humans are chaos dressed in skin." "Compliment taken," she said. The alien studied her face, the small scar at her temple, the faint tremor in her fingers. She didn't look dangerous. Too young. Too human. Yet something in her stillness unsettled him. She wasn't restrained by the cuffs. She was restrained by choice. "Tell us," he said, circling. "Why fight? You had no chance." She followed him with her eyes, polite, almost teacherly. "You think wars are about winning. For us, they're about learning how far we can go before something breaks. Usually it's the other guy." He stopped. Such arrogance from a dying breed. "Maybe," she murmured. "But arrogance is just confidence without caffeine." The observers scribbled frantically. Species relies on chemical stimulants for courage. Evelyn chuckled under her breath, knowing exactly what they were writing. Her mind ticked behind the mask. Each hum in the wall told her where the power veins ran. Every step of her captor mapped the ship's rhythm. She wasn't planning escape. Not yet. She was listening. The door slid open with a hiss, and a new figure entered. Taller, dressed in navy armor polished like obsidian. The insignia of the Imperial Intelligence Command burned gold on his chest. The guard stiffened. "Lord Zyron," whispered the interrogator, bowing slightly. "The subject remains resistant." Zyron's eyes glowed faint amber, thin irises contracting like knives. He looked Evelyn over, slow and deliberate. "You're smaller than I expected." "I get that a lot," she said. He circled her once. Your species has fought poorly yet cost us dearly. You bleed, yet keep moving. Why? Evelyn tilted her head. Because we hate paperwork. He paused, almost amused despite himself. You mock death. Only when it's late to the party. The interrogator hissed in frustration. Permission to escalate, my lord. Zyron considered her, eyes narrowing. Not yet. She's hiding something. Watch her hands. Her fingers drummed softly against the cuffs, a human rhythm. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. The aliens didn't recognize Morse code. The lights above flickered in sync. You're tapping, Zyron said suspiciously. Old habit, she said sweetly. Helps me think. About what? She looked him dead in the eye. Escape velocity. The translator faltered on the word escape. The guards shifted nervously. Zyron leaned closer, intrigued now, predator to predator. You believe you can flee this vessel? Evelyn's tone softened, almost kind. Not flee. Leave. Difference is intent. He almost smiled. You amuse me, human. But amusement won't save you. She shrugged as best she could in the restraints. That's fine. I'm not the one who needs saving. The hum of the ship deepened. Somewhere in the decks below, a minor alarm blinked red for half a second and went dark. None of the aliens noticed. The interrogator returned to his console, muttering about human defiance. He adjusted the dials for one final surge. Perhaps pain will unravel her jokes. Evelyn inhaled slowly. The current struck. Her body tensed, jaw clenched, but her eyes, steady, deliberate, never left Zyron's. The lights around them dimmed to crimson. Monitors cracked. The power grid faltered again. When it ended, the chamber reeked of burnt ozone. Evelyn coughed once, smiled faintly and said, I've had worse dates. The technician stumbled back, tentacles trembling. Impossible. The dosage was lethal. Zyron stared at the flickering monitors. No. Not lethal to her. Evelyn's voice softened to a whisper, as if speaking to herself. You should have let me finish my coffee before this war started. Something shifted in the air, a pulse just beneath hearing. The ship's lights fluttered once more, an invisible ripple crawling through the systems like a sigh. Zyron's communicator crackled. Lord, power fluctuations across Deck 13. Source unidentified. He looked at her. She met his gaze, calm, almost pitying. You really should check your ventilation shafts. They hum funny. The interrogator frowned. Ventilation shafts? Evelyn smiled, small and serene. Just an observation. The room fell into silence except for the hum. The same hum that now carried a faint rhythm, echoing her earlier tapping. The translator, still running, flagged the pattern as non-linguistic noise. But Zyron's instincts prickled. Something about it felt deliberate. He turned sharply to his aides. Lock the cell. Double the field. Evelyn nodded approvingly. Good idea. He frowned. You think this is a game? No, she said softly. It's practice. The lights steadied. The hum subsided. For now, everything looked normal again. Guards returned to their posts, reassured by procedure. Only Zyron lingered a moment longer, studying the woman who should have been terrified but wasn't. She smiled up at him, voice light, conversational. If it helps, you're doing great. Really. 10 out of 10 for effort. He left without replying. When the door sealed, Evelyn exhaled slowly. The cuffs glowed faintly, then dimmed. Inside their alloy, microscopic filaments pulsed, transmitting coded energy through the ship's power grid, hitchhiking on frequencies the aliens didn't even know existed. She leaned her head back, whispering a line from an old Earth song under her breath. The translator caught fragments but not meaning. Take me home. Somewhere deep in the ship, a subsystem responded. A quiet click. Then silence. Evelyn closed her eyes, smiled again. Still polite, still patient. The first move had been made. The observation deck smelled faintly of ozone and burned circuitry. Overnight, 3 surveillance drones had short-circuited while recording the human. The technicians whispered theories about electromagnetic residue, about biological interference, about curses. Lord Zyron ignored them all. He stood before the glass, arms clasped behind his back, watching the prisoner sip the lukewarm nutrient fluid they had offered her as food. She looked unimpressed. She even swirled the cup, sniffed, and muttered, "Not coffee." Across the room, a cluster of xenopsychologists debated in hushed voices. "Her heartbeat is irregular," one said. "Her cortisol levels suggest extreme stress." Another shook his tendrils. "Yet she smiles. Perhaps it's a death display." Zyron silenced them with a gesture. "No more theories. Bring her here." Moments later, Evelyn Ross was escorted into the main chamber, still barefoot, still carrying that same casual serenity, as though she were walking into a cafe rather than an interrogation. The guards flanked her with plasma rifles humming. She looked at the weapons, then at Zyron. "I'm assuming that's the galactic equivalent of saying hello?" "Sit," Zyron ordered. "Sure," she said cheerfully, taking the only chair and crossing her legs. "Though back home we usually start with names and coffee." He studied her face. "You've endured pain without response. You've resisted truth serum, neural disruption, and hypoxia. Tell me how." "I eat my vegetables," she said. He stepped closer. "You mock me again." "Habit," she replied softly. "We mock the things we survive." There was something disarming in her tone, so light it almost invited sympathy. For the briefest second, he wondered if she was frightened, and merely disguising it beneath that human humor. But her eyes held no tremor, only a patient stillness that unsettled him more than any defiance. He waved toward the console. "Prepare the serum again. Triple dose." The interrogator hesitated. "My lord, the neural inhibitors." "Do it." A syringe of liquid silver hissed as it entered her arm. Evelyn winced slightly, then smiled faintly. "You know," she murmured. "Our dentist used to use this stuff to calm people down. Never worked." Seconds passed. The heart monitor blinked steadily. Then her pulse slowed, too slowly. The medic gasped. "My lord, her synapses are synchronizing with the field emitters. She's stabilizing the serum." "That's impossible," Zyron snapped. Evelyn tilted her head. "You folks really should stop saying that around humans." The translator flagged her statement as mild threat cloaked in humor. The analysts scribbled frantically. Zyron ignored them, pacing around her like a predator. "You are not afraid of death?" "I'm practical about it," she said. "We all die. The trick is making sure the right people remember why." He narrowed his eyes. "You speak as though you plan for it." She gave him a small, knowing smile. "I plan for everything." The room felt colder. Even the air recyclers seemed to pause, listening. Zyron leaned in close enough that she could see her reflection in his polished armor. "What are you planning now?" "Honestly? A nap," she said. "But I doubt you'll let me." He straightened, half irritated, half intrigued. "You truly are the strangest creature we've ever captured." "I get that a lot." Behind the glass wall, one of the analysts whispered. "Her brain waves form fractal patterns under stress, beautiful symmetry, like music." Another replied. "Music? Or code?" The commander turned sharply. "Code." The scientist swallowed. "There's interference in the communication grid. Low-frequency pulses matching her heart rate." Zyron's gaze returned to the prisoner. She was humming again, soft, steady, familiar. The same earth melody she had hummed before. "Take me home, country roads." "What is that sound?" he demanded. "A song," she said, feigning innocence. "Helps me think." The technician muttered. "It's modulating signal bandwidths," but his voice cut off as Zyron raised a hand. "Stop analysis. Increase field strength." The energy surged. Evelyn's body convulsed once, violently, then went still. The sensors screamed. Every monitor displayed erratic data. Temperature spikes, magnetic flux surges, gravitational distortions at micro-levels. The interrogator gasped. She's distorting the environment. Evelyn exhaled, whispering. You ever notice how quiet space gets before something loud happens? A tremor rippled through the deck plates. Instruments blinked, then died. Emergency lights flared crimson. Zyron barked, "Restore power." The medic shouted, "It's not the systems, my lord, the ship's reacting to her." Through it all, Evelyn sat motionless, eyes closed, lips curved in faint amusement. "You shouldn't have let me finish that song," she murmured. Her heartbeat steadied, stronger now. The serum in her veins glowed faintly, merging with the metallic sheen of the cuffs. For a moment, she looked translucent. Human veins mapped like circuitry. "Contain her!" Zyron roared. The guards fired a containment pulse. The energy shimmered and vanished before reaching her. "Your toys don't like me," she said softly. He stepped forward, fury barely restrained. "What are you?" "Polite," she replied. "Usually." The translator hesitated, uncertain whether to file the word under humor or warning. Zyron turned to the analysts. "She's using unknown technology. Find its source." The medic shook his head. "It's biological, my lord. She's rewriting herself." Silence. The statement hung like static. Evelyn opened her eyes. "You're still trying to classify us. That's your problem. You think every war is about weapons. Ours are about habits." "Habits?" She smiled faintly. "Coffee. Music. Revenge." Her voice carried no malice, just a soft human warmth that somehow felt more terrifying than anger. Zyron found himself stepping back, pulse racing though he didn't know why. The room seemed smaller, her presence heavier. He needed to regain control. "You are one soldier. You can't harm an empire." Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. "Empires fall easier than people think. Usually from inside." A burst of static interrupted. The calm officer's voice crackled through Zyron's earpiece. "My lord, external scanners show an anomaly. A coded radiation pattern, originating from inside the vessel." Zyron froze. "Decode it." "We can't. It's primitive. Repeating numbers." Evelyn's smile widened, subtle and deliberate. "Pi," she said softly. "What?" "Just a human thing. We like infinite numbers." Her gaze turned inward, as if listening to something only she could hear. Then, almost conversationally, she asked, "Do you know what happens when you divide perfection by chaos?" No one answered. She grinned. "You get us." Her monitors stabilized again. Power returned. The alarm stopped. Everything looked normal, as if nothing had happened. But every alien in the room felt a quiet dread they couldn't name. Zyron broke the silence. "End this session. Confine her until further notice." As the guards escorted her out, Evelyn glanced back at him, eyes gleaming under the sterile light. "For what it's worth, you're not bad company. Just predictable." He said nothing. The door sealed, locking her away. Moments later, one of the analysts approached him hesitantly. "My lord, her neural emissions left residue in the system. It's spreading through the local network." "Purge it," Zyron ordered. "We tried. It's self-replicating." He turned slowly toward the glass, toward the corridor beyond where she had walked. "Then it's not residue," he said quietly. "It's a message." Inside her cell, Evelyn lay back on the bench, watching the ceiling lights pulse in time with her heartbeat. She whispered to herself, "Signals alive." Across the ship's vast hull, communication relays began to flicker. Brief, rhythmic, invisible to alien sensors but instantly recognizable to human frequencies hidden among the stars. Evelyn closed her eyes. Phase 1 complete. The silence before dawn aboard the Eclipsera was almost holy. Only the low hum of the reactor whispered through the corridors. The crew believed the prisoner finally subdued, sedated, and sealed in her reinforced cell. Lord Zyron, after 30 hours without rest, stood before the central viewport watching the faint shimmer of a nearby nebula, its colors pulsing like a heartbeat. He told himself he was not thinking about the human. But her smile kept intruding, an expression that felt less like defiance and more like a promise. In the lower decks, alarms whispered instead of screamed. A faint anomaly blinked once on the engineer's console, tagged as non-critical. The technician sighed and logged it for later review. He didn't notice the coolant temperature drop to 0, or the faint warmth of a human breath behind the ventilation grate above his head. Evelyn Ross crouched there, barefoot, patient, her body a map of shadows. She had slipped her restraints 2 hours earlier by melting the molecular bonds with microbursts of heat from her own blood nanites. No one knew she'd moved. No one had even checked. Her voice barely rose above the hum. "You shouldn't have let me finish that song," she whispered. She dropped silently to the floor, landing like a dancer. The air shimmered around her, her pulse syncing with the ship's systems. Each breath released a microscopic pulse of interference, threading through the circuits like perfume. Every panel she passed dimmed slightly, as if the ship held its breath with her. In the command deck, Zyron's second officer frowned at the data feed. "Power flux in engineering. Probably a sensor ghost." "Check it," Zyron replied absently. The officer nodded, sending 2 guards. They never arrived. Cameras caught a blur of motion, then static. When the image returned, the corridor was empty except for a faint handprint on the wall, outlined in condensation. In her wake, Evelyn left no blood, no sound, only confusion. She passed the armory, opened the lock with a glance. The door recognized her biometric signature, though she was not in the system. Human infiltration software ran quietly inside her bloodstream, rewriting the code of everything she touched. She plucked a compact plasma sidearm from the rack, inspected it, and murmured, "Cute toy." Then she set it down. Her hands were steadier than metal. She wasn't here to kill. Not yet. In the surveillance bay, a junior officer shouted, "Sector 9 breach." "Impossible," someone answered. Evelyn's voice came through the comms, calm and amused. "You really should stop using that word." The room froze. The voice wasn't transmitted through any known channel. It was piggybacking on the ship's environmental sensors, woven through air recyclers and comm frequencies. Zyron spun toward the main screen. "Locate her." Negative signal lock. "She's everywhere." On screen, lights flickered through the hallways, doors opening and closing by themselves, elevators freezing mid-descent. Somewhere deep in the hull, the reactor's auxiliary regulators began to hum a low, melodic rhythm. The crew panicked. Zyron felt something colder than fear creeping up his spine. "She's inside the network," he realized. "No, sir," the chief technician whispered. "She is the network." In the shadows of the ship's heart, Evelyn moved with purpose. Every step matched the rhythm of her heartbeat, and the ship responded, lights dimming in synchronization. She paused by a panel, fingers brushing its surface. A holographic schematic appeared, glowing blue. She traced one line, the communication uplink to the Empire's tactical array. Then she smiled. "Phase 2, she murmured. Her implant pulsed once, and the network bridges across the Empire began receiving a harmless ping, a pulse disguised as background noise. No one noticed. Not yet. Back in the command deck, the lights flickered again. "Reactor temperature rising. Stabilize it." Zyron barked. The technician's voice cracked. "I can't. The system isn't responding. It's following new commands." "Whose commands?" The screen blinked with a line of text that scrolled in Galactic Standard. No signature, no encryption, just words. "Would you like to continue? Y/N." Zyron stared at it. "What does that mean?" Evelyn's voice echoed through the speakers, soft as breath. "You might want to press N." The crew froze. Someone whispered, "She's taunting us." "Humans don't taunt," Zyron said. "They warn." She appeared then, not as flesh but as projection. Her image shimmering above the central console, faint static running through her outline. She looked calm, even kind, her eyes reflecting distant starlight. "You could have just asked for a truce, you know," she said conversationally. "You have doomed yourself," Zyron hissed. "This act of sabotage will destroy you too." Maybe, she said. But you misunderstand. I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm correcting it. The hologram blinked out. In the next moment, a deep vibration rolled through the hull. The reactor's pulse aligned perfectly with her heartbeat. Elsewhere, frightened crews sealed blast doors, whispered prayers to their alien gods. The ship seemed alive now, groaning with a rhythm older than machines. The metal corridors carried her song faintly. Take me home, country roads, slowed to a ghostly tempo. Commander! The medic gasped. That melody, it's modulating the power grid. Shut it off. Zyron roared. We can't. The system recognizes it as a priority signal. Zyron clenched his fists. Send a kill code. Which one, sir? All of them. They tried. Each command returned the same mocking reply. Access denied. User, humanity. Evelyn's laugh echoed faintly, not cruel but tired, as though she pitied them. You wanted to study us. You should have started with our patients. She walked now into the main corridor, alarms painting her in red light. Dead silence followed her footsteps. 2 guards appeared, trembling, weapons drawn. Stop! One shouted. She did. Slowly raised her hands.
See?
I'm cooperating. The guards hesitated. For a moment, she looked harmless again, pale, bruised, barefoot. Then she tilted her head, eyes soft. You should run. They fired. The blasts went wide, ricocheting off the walls as gravity flickered. The energy bent midair and vanished. Evelyn stepped forward, untouched. That's adorable, she said gently. Both guards collapsed. Not dead, just unconscious, their neural links overwhelmed by her signal. She crouched beside them, adjusting one's helmet strap. It's not personal. None of this ever is. The overhead lights dimmed again. Zyron's voice thundered through the comms. Ross, what do you want? Her voice came back, calm and measured. Nothing you can give. What are you doing to my ship? I told you, she said, walking toward the command deck now. Practicing. He felt his chest tighten. She wasn't bluffing. She was training. The doors opened before her like they'd been waiting. The guards on the bridge froze as she entered. Unarmed, smiling, hair damp with sweat. You look tired, she told Zyron softly. You should sit down. Things are about to move fast. He raised his weapon. Stay where you are. She stopped, unafraid. You ever notice, she said, almost to herself, how humans always warn before we bite? Before anyone could respond, every console flashed white. The ship's AI spoke for the first time in recorded history. Command override detected. Executing PI protocol. The crew screamed as gravity collapsed, lights blinding, the ship folding in on itself. Evelyn didn't move. She stood in the center of the chaos, eyes glowing faint gold, whispering through the storm. Now the galaxy learns what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. Then, as the command deck shattered into light, she smiled. Gentle, human, unstoppable. The Eclipsera was no longer a ship. It was a scream frozen in metal. The reactor's pulse beat like a second heart as the vessel drifted, half-folded, in the quiet between stars. Smoke coiled through its corridors, carrying the scent of ozone, melted alloy, and the sharp tang of something not entirely physical. Evelyn Ross stood at the epicenter of the ruin, surrounded by flickering light and broken control panels. Her bare feet touched the scorched deck. Her expression was calm, almost regretful. She looked less like a soldier, and more like someone watching the tide go out after a storm she had not meant to unleash. Around her, the surviving aliens knelt or cowered. Some muttered prayers, others stared blankly, unable to comprehend the silent network pulse emanating from her body. The PI protocol had finished. Across the galaxy, hundreds of Imperial warships now carried the same pulse, an invisible contagion that whispered through comm channels, rewriting code, waking dormant human traps hidden for years. The Empire had studied humans for centuries. They never realized the studying went both ways. Lord Zyron lay against a shattered console, armor cracked, breath ragged. His voice rasped through blood and static. "What have you done?" Evelyn crouched beside him, her tone gentle. "I opened the door you built. You just never asked what was on the other side. You doomed us." She smiled faintly. "We were already doomed. You just finally noticed." He tried to lift his weapon, trembling. She placed a hand on the barrel, lowering it with quiet ease. "You think I came here to destroy you. But that's not how we work." "Then why?" he hissed. Her gaze drifted toward the fractured viewport, where starlight painted her in silver and blue. "Because you tortured one of us. You thought that meant you won. But all you did was announce yourselves to every listening ear that humanity still had." On cue, a transmission cut through the static, a human voice, low and rough, echoing from the void. "Evelyn, status?" She smiled faintly. "On my feet. Extraction inbound. 30 seconds. The aliens stared at the speakers, recognizing the language only from intercepted broadcasts, never hearing it delivered with such calm authority. Zyron whispered, "You let yourself be captured." "Of course," she said. "You don't send soldiers into cages unless the cage needs to open from the inside." The deck trembled as a ripple of light appeared outside, a human stealth vessel decloaking, sleek and dark against the stars. The ship's insignia glimmered like a grin. Hecata Division. Evelyn turned back to the broken commander. "Do you know what your empire taught us?" He blinked through blood. "That you fear death?" She shook her head softly. "That we fear boredom." His confusion lingered only a moment before the external doors began to melt open. Human troopers stepped through the smoke, armor matte black, visors reflecting fire. They moved with relaxed precision, as though this wasn't a rescue but an evening stroll. One of them grinned under his mask. "Miss Ross, you broke another flagship." "Occupational hazard," she replied. The troopers secured the survivors without a word of cruelty, binding them gently, even offering water. The contrast unnerved the aliens more than the violence had. Mercy from monsters was worse than punishment. As the extraction officer handed Evelyn a thermal cloak, she glanced back at Zyron. "You'll live," she said. "Someone has to tell them what happened." He spat weakly, voice cracking. "You think they'll believe me?" She adjusted the cloak around her shoulders. "Oh, they'll believe you. Fear has a way of making listeners." The troopers activated the evac beacon. The ruined corridors brightened as the ship systems finally gave up their ghost. Evelyn paused, watching the last flicker of the Empire's insignia fade from the wall display. "Funny thing," she murmured. "You call yourselves civilized, but you never understood the quiet things, like patience or humor. That's why you lost." The medic beside her gestured toward the exit. "Ma'am, time to go." She nodded and stepped through the breach into the cold blackness of space, her boots magnetizing automatically as the airlock sealed behind her. The human vessel loomed close, a shadow against the nebula. Inside, its corridors glowed with warm yellow light, the color of Earth's sun, chosen deliberately to remind soldiers what they fought for. As she entered, a voice crackled from the bridge. "The feed's still open. You want to say something, Baba Yaga?" She hesitated, then faced the camera. Somewhere, across half the galaxy, Imperial receivers blinked to life, transmitting her image into every surviving fleet. Her hair hung loose, her face streaked with soot, but her eyes were steady. "This isn't a war anymore," she said softly. "It's a warning. You can burn our cities, cage our people, even call us primitive. But the thing you'll never understand," she leaned closer to the lens, "is that humans don't conquer for power. We do it to make sure no one ever hurts us again." Static rippled through the transmission. On hundreds of worlds, Imperial officers froze as her face appeared on their command screens for a single heartbeat before fading. Evelyn exhaled slowly and turned to her team. "Take us home." The ship angled toward the nearest wormhole, engines humming like a heartbeat beneath her feet. As the stars stretched into streaks of light, she finally allowed herself a small, weary laugh. "Remind me to file for overtime," she muttered. The extraction officer smirked. "You think Command will approve it?" "They will," she said. They're human. Far behind them, the wreckage of the Eclipsura disintegrated into silent fragments. Yet one shard remained intact, floating amid the nebula's glow. Within it, Xiron stared at the empty void where the human ship had vanished. He whispered to the darkness, "If that was only one." His words trailed into silence. He looked down at his trembling hands, then at the faint mark burned into the deck where she had stood. Not a scorch pattern, not radiation. Just a handprint. Human-sized. Ordinary. And that was what terrified him most. Because somewhere in that small, imperfect print was the truth that would haunt his species for centuries. The galaxy had seen war, it had seen empires rise and fall, but never before had it faced a creature that smiled before it struck, and apologized afterward. He turned his eyes to the stars, and whispered a final prayer in his native tongue. It translated, roughly, to, "May they never come again." Evelyn's voice, recorded in the Empire's archives for decades after, played as the final echo. "We're not gods. We're not demons. We're just human. And that's enough."